As a democratic republic, voting is a cornerstone of America. The United States prides itself on the ability for every individual to cast their vote and have an impact on how the government is run. For debate purposes, there's actually only one person, sometimes three, sometimes five in a national final round, that has a vote, and that is the judge. The judge evaluates the arguments and votes for or against the resolution. This is often misconstrued. Sometimes judges are taught or debaters are taught that they're actually voting for a debater or against a debater. It's not entirely untrue, but as we've gone through some of these specific debate elements, you've seen that a debater could make a really good argument, but it's sometimes complicated how it connects to the resolution if they're not doing it right. For this video, we are specifically talking about the end of the round, the very last 2 minutes of your last speech, whichever debating position you're in, and the voters that you offer to summarize and clarify the round. Voters are exactly what they sound like. The reason the judge should vote for you. You want to articulate them using that language. It does two things. One, it makes sure that you have organization and the judge can see that organization. But two, if a judge is confused, this is your opportunity to really summarize and crystallize. Some debate formats call it like a crystallization speech. Why you should win the round. Taking all of this chaos and putting it in these nice little neat packages for them to comprehend. We're going to talk about what a voter is. We're going to talk about how to structure a voter because there's a specific method I want you to try to adopt. And then we're going to talk about some strategies that we use when thinking of and creating our voters. So first, what is a voter? Voting disempowers the citizenry. I disagree. But that's how you might phrase a voter. Voting for the affirmative does this thing. Okay? So the first thing you want to ask is, what are the reasons I win the round? Oftentimes after a practice debate, if we're all watching one larger debate, or if it's a smaller scale debate, I might ask, give me one reason, one argument, one line, one theme that wins you the round, or one each side the round, right? There's usually a good reason on both sides to have won the round. And so thinking about it through that lens helps. Again, the language of voter is a reminder to the judge that they are the ones deciding. Linguistically, it's usually best to say, you can feel comfortable voting for enter my side, affirmative, negative, pro, con, government, opposition, whatever. For IPDA, for the affirmative, for the negative. Some judges have to hear the word for them to consider it. I think this is a little lazy, but we know that that's how some judges are, and so we make sure that we accommodate their needs. But even if they don't require it, it's still helpful to signal to a judge, hey, I'm moving to my voters now. Having a well-organized and phrased set of voters can be the difference between winning and losing a round. In a tight round, that last speech is extremely important, and having an opportunity to say, this is the reason I win the round, it's really clear, it's really obvious, you should feel comfortable voting for the negative, really helps the judge, kind of persuades them, right? It boosts your ethos. Next, we can look at some things that you should not do. You should not simply restate your main points. If your three voters or your three contentions, you're doing it wrong, right? You want to be crystallizing, summarizing. I'll sometimes use the word clumping, right? These are the three major themes of this debate, not your three arguments. Some debaters on the affirmative will use some of the final affirmative speech to rebut the opposing voters. I don't think that's a terrible strategy. I think there's better things you can do during that time. Never say, I have only one voter today. You should probably have at least two. Honestly, if you end up with just one, it's okay, but that's probably more of a summarizing theme than necessarily a specific voter that you're getting at. Don't speed through these either. These are critical. And if you're just like, oh, and now I have 30 seconds and I'm going to offer three voters in 30 seconds and talk really fast and we're going to hope that I get it out and that you can understand what I'm saying because if I don't get these out, then maybe you won't vote for me. And if you don't vote for me, I don't win the round. And that's really bad. Don't do that. Don't. No one wants that. Um, so leave yourself time. Leave yourself at least, I think, 2 minutes. I think you can get away with 1.5 and do 30 seconds per voter. I like the 2 minute window. Put framework or topicality debate as a voter. Don't do that. Unless you're arguing abuse, and that's been a major theme the whole round, leave that aside. Now, if you're putting like your threshold term or the weighing mechanism, that's different. But you're not arguing that they did debate wrong and therefore they lose. That's generally not something that's going to win you an IPDA round, unless there's clear abuse, and then the abuse itself should be the voter. Common voters you might consider threshold terms, right? We've talked about that in a few debates, a few videos ago with the threshold debates in the past present. Having that threshold as a voter or some sort of word in the resolution, perhaps, significantly, right? They've shown that it is some, but not significantly, right? So you can use those threshold terms and qualifier terms as voters to highlight why you win the round. They have not met this threshold. You might choose the weighing mechanism. Maybe it's an on balance metaphor about how you should consider on balance. Maybe it's re explaining cost benefit analysis. I think sometimes that's redundant because you're sort of doing it throughout. You might put that at the beginning of the voter's speech. But overall, if you're not sure what to do, using your weighing mechanism isn't a terrible thing. Two worlds analysis. I love this. I put in the past present that you shouldn't do this in a past present round because there is no second world. But anything that's looking at the future, you can run a two worlds analysis. And I don't think that's ever a bad idea. It's a really easy way to articulate to the judge two clear potential outcomes. And you really highlight the harm of one and really highlight the benefits of yours. And then stock issues, harms, inherency, solvency. We've had debaters in the past that use the analogy of a stool. In order for a stool, right? Imagine a stool. There are three legs on this stool. There needs to be a harm, there needs to be a solvency of this harm, and there needs to be, I'm forgetting the third one, but you get the idea, right? So the harms, inherency, and it needs to not be going away on its own. And if one of these legs doesn't exist, the stool topples over. Judge, my second voter today is inherency, or there is no harm, right? You might also say there is no harm and then use the stool analogy. That is clearly not mine because I messed it up, but I'm not going to redo the video because I think it's funny when I make mistakes. So stock issues. We haven't really talked about stock issues in any of the videos I've made so far. I may or may not make a stock issues video. It's really more of a policy style debate structure. And it's very debate theory heavy, mild theory, but it's all debate theory. And so we tend to avoid it sometimes. So what does a voter look like? How do you structure it? It's very simple. Three parts. They said this, I said this, so I win. Right? Impact is how I have it phrased there. Right? They said that water bottles made of metal are better for the environment. I pointed out the significant amount of aluminum waste in landfills. They did not provide an adequate response. What we then can conclude is that even if you're using metal water bottles, there's going to be a significant amount, there's going to be just as much waste. There's no improvement between either side. And as such, there's no value in passing the proposal. Right? They said this, I said that. This is why that matters in the round, or I win the round. Here's some other examples. I used this in one of the other videos, Disney is King. So this is a fact round, present tense. My first voter today is going to be well-rounded. Again, Judge, my first voter is well-rounded. The negative made the argument that Universal has comparable parks and Netflix has comparable streaming. But what they failed to recognize is that these are all different companies that each have one good thing, where Disney is either first or second in all of the things. So even Judge, if you combine if you buy all of these arguments about these individual things, because Disney is so well rounded and has all of the things that nobody else has, they are king. There are lords and ladies that have one thing, but the king has everything. And Disney is the only one that has everything. I also used an analogy there. I talked about that specific one during the past present fact round lecture, right? Pulling on these analogies, right? A king has everything. Might be a weighing, might be a voter as well. A cool way to phrase that. Example two. I'm on the negative for this one. All schools should be paperless. Judge, my second voter is that we can do both. Again, Judge, we can do both. The affirmative has explained in great detail how paperless communication is a benefit, how using technology can prepare students for the outside world and make them better adults. However, I pointed out that paper has all of these benefits, and I'm not arguing for paper only. You can have all of the things. They haven't provided an adequate response for why paperless, no paper at all, is better than paper and technology. Why we can't do both. As such, there's only one world that both accommodates for students with needs, provides the paper training, and provides for technology development. And that's the negative today, Judge. That's a little more rounded out version than the one on here, but like that's what you do. They said this, this was my response, and this is why my world's better. So that sort of sounds two world analysis-y, so you might have some redundancy in that third voter if that's where you go, but that's okay. So here's some strategies to keep in mind when thinking about voters, because a lot of times we get to the last speech and you're a minute into the last affirmative speech or 3 minutes into the last negative speech, and you're like, uh-oh, what are my voters going to be? So here are some thoughts. General strategy. Your first voter is why you're in the right? Why you win the round. Again, it shouldn't be a contention. It could be benefits. I have outlined multiple benefits to this proposal on this level, first point, on this level, second point, and on that level, third point. I have proven that there are significant benefits to this proposal and that we should go ahead with it. The negative has failed to effectively rebut those. As such, the affirmative benefits hold and should weigh in favor of the affirmative when it comes time to cast your ballot. The second voter is then why they are wrong. If you can pull something from their case and turn it to your side, that's huge, right? I always like to make my second voter from their case. That really, really highlights to the judge that you are very aware of what's going on in the round and are certainly on point, and they're like, whoa, that was really cool. Final voter could easily be criteria weighing mechanism, the threshold language, or a two worlds analysis, right? That's a pretty common structure. That doesn't mean you have to do that, right? You could set up a two worlds analysis at the beginning. So, Judge, today I want you to think about this debate in the sense of two worlds. There's an affirmative world, which is where their plan takes effect, and there's a negative world, which would be the status quo or the world we live in now. As I walk through my three voters, you'll notice that the world of the negative is superior to the world of the affirmative, right? My first voter is blah. Do not feel like you have to preview your voters. Some people do. It's a little novice-y. That doesn't mean it's bad speech practice. What it means is you only have 3 minutes and you're going to run out of time. So don't spend a bunch of time previewing voters. Give them the tag and move on. All right, some advanced strategies. Know at least one of your voters coming into the round. Your first voter is why you win, right? So, what voter is going to be hypercritical in this round? Especially in a threshold debate, you can probably pinpoint it. If there's a qualifier word, right, or a threshold word on the negative, hyperfixate on that. Be like, this is going to be the crux of this round. This word, prioritize, highly prioritize. King. King doesn't mean equal to others. King means highly superior. The affirmative has proposed that because Disney is equal to all these other companies, but is well rounded, that they win the round. But what they fail to realize is that the king isn't equal. Just because the Duke doesn't have the same amount of power as the king. The king is highly superior as per the definition presented at the beginning of the round. Even if Disney is more well rounded, they're still not king because king is superior in all ways and super high. Also, they're second in a lot. The king's never second, right? So you can think about that definition prior to the round and really kind of fixate on that. And as that debate develops, you have a separate sheet and you're writing down notes specifically on that voter because you know in advance that's going to be critical. So having that separate sheet is really big. So judge, blah, 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 blah. So moving on to my voters. These are my voters, right? Whether it's a different color, whether it's sticky notes of a different color, setting them off to the side and having them available to you on a separate sheet that you can work on as the round progresses is really important because otherwise, where do you put them? How do you put them? When do you think of them? As you think of them, it's like, oh, this round has been all about this definition. Write it down. Especially if they say it. They're like, Judge, this is turning into a definitional debate. You're like, you know what? You're right. Let me write down this definition on my voter page. You have to have a label. The stronger the label, the better. Some people get cute and do alliteration. That can be cool. It's not entirely necessary. The more you can turn your opponent's case against them, the better. And that's why that structure comes in so big because you're saying, they said this, I said this. This is why I win, and this is what that means in the rounds, right? So it might end up being a 4 point. Them, me, round, impact. And then think about even if arguments, especially in the case that you've been debating framework, right? So you come and you offer an alternative definition of a word. Or more likely, they say on balance more true than false. You say cost benefit analysis because it's kind of a future round. And you've been pushing back and forth a little bit on this weighing mechanism, not spending a whole lot of time on it, but it's there. You might have your first contention, your first voter might be your argument that you thought of in advance, your theme, right? Your voter, through the lens of um, cost benefit analysis. But, Judge, even if you buy their true false framework, you can recognize that I have met the threshold that they have placed forth in their own definitions in this way and that way and this way. So, even if you buy it, here is why I still win is also a really cool way to sort of turn arguments and kind of hedge your bets, right? Because you might lose the framework debate because judges are like, well, the F has the right to define it, and they said true, false, whatever. That's why you don't spend a whole lot of time on it. You're just like, hey, I think this is a future oriented round. I think cost benefit analysis will be better. I think it fits this resolution better and will lead to a more educational debate. Let's go. Right? Um, so even if arguments are really important. And sometimes it's also their arguments. Remember, you might have heard it. Even if you buy that all of these individual companies might match Disney in these specific areas, those are still vastly different companies, all only winning one area each, where Disney is first or second in everything, proving that they are overall superior to all of these companies, and overall, they are king. Okay. Voters are an important part of the round the judges often look for. Bad voters do hurt your ethos. Good voters help your ethos. They're not going to win you every single round, but they certainly help. Make sure you leave time for voters at the end of your last speech, whichever side you're on. Have as much voters planned out as you can in advance, whether that's during the speeches or that's, while you're in prep. If you're on the affirmative, yeah, you kind of want to listen to the negative voters, but once they get into that, they shouldn't be offering anything new. You can sort of zone out and use that time to prep your voters. As soon as they say, so we're going to get into my voters, click. I'm working on mine and sort of back burnering what I'm hearing over behind me, unless you have them already. If you're stuck defaulting on top of case components, weighing mechanism, definitions, framework, whatever, is sometimes a good backup plan, and sometimes it's the right plan, right? Especially in a fact round, definitional arguments end up being the crux of it quite often. So that's voters. Hopefully that gives you a good sense of what you're looking for. It really helps to just sort of practice it. A good practice exercise might be to take a resolution, prep a debate, run a debate, then go back and think, what should my voters have been? And really look at it retroactively and then re-give that last 2 minutes. So that's voters. I wish you luck. And I'll see you in round.